everyone, and welcome to the Ohio Promise information session. We're so glad that you could join us. We have some great information to share with you today. So let's get started. My name is Marie Willens, and I am the president of Southwest Ohio AEYC.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ross Sonemaker. I go by Chad, and I'm the Executive Director and Communication Manager for Southwest Ohio AEYC.
Note that since this is in a webinar format, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A function or the chat. We will also ask for questions at the end of the meeting if you prefer to wait until then. Here's a quick overview of the structure for tonight's information session. We'll begin with some general information about NACCE and SWAYC, including an overview of what we do. Then we'll hear from Dr. Laura Maddox and Megan Carlton of OCALI and Troy Hunter of Groundwork, Ohio, and learn more about the Ohio Promise Initiative and how it will impact the field of early childhood education. Next, we'll provide some information on our upcoming events and how you can get involved. Then we will hold a live prize drawing for one NACCE-SWAYC standard membership. Finally, we'll hold a Q&A to answer the questions you submitted during registration, as well as any questions you asked during tonight's event. Chad?
Thanks, Marie. Now let's take a look at some information on NACCE. As a state-level affiliate, our work aligns with the mission and vision of NACCE. NACCE, which stands for the National Association for the Education of Young Children, is a professional membership organization that works to promote high-quality early learning for all young children birth through age 8 by connecting early childhood practice, policy, and research. We advance a diverse, dynamic early childhood profession, and we support all who care for, educate, and work on behalf of young children. The National Association comprises nearly 60,000 individual members of the early childhood community and more than 50 affiliates, all committed to delivering on the promise of high-quality early learning. And together, we work to achieve a collective vision that all young children thrive and learn in a society that's dedicated to ensuring that they reach their full potential. Southwest Ohio Association for the Education of Young Children, or SWAYC, is a state-level NACCE affiliate that serves Cincinnati, Columbus, Dayton, and 16 surrounding counties. We work with NACCE to extend member benefits, growth, and engagement. If you are not yet a member, then consider joining today. NACCE memberships are available for as little as $30 per year. So join the premier membership association for early learning professionals by visiting nacce.org/membership, and be sure to select Southwest Ohio AEYC as your affiliate. And I've got a link in the chat for you to learn more about membership there. Marie?
Thanks, Chad. Here's an overview of what we do. We provide the collective voice of early childhood education for our region. We do this by connecting our membership and the early childhood field at large. We also connect with other organizations and host our own events. In the coming months, we are planning on participating in NACCE's Public Policy Forum, celebrating the Week of the Young Child, and holding our annual Early Childhood Awards. We also provide a direct link to the National Association for the Education of Young Children. Some opportunities, such as the NACCE Public Policy Forum happening November 25th and 26th this year, are organized by state teams, but we work directly with NACCE at the national level too. Finally, we work primarily through our board and committees. Later today, you will hear about those committees and the work that they do. We would love to have you get more involved with SWAYC either through the board or a committee. Now, let's get to the information on Ohio Promise. We are joined today by Dr. Laura Maddox and Megan Carlton of OCALI. Thanks so much for joining us today, Lauren and Megan.
Thank you for having us. We'll go ahead and first, I just want to say thanks so much for inviting us. We are so glad to be here, and share more information about Ohio Promise. I want to start with just saying Megan is your Southwest region inclusion support specialist. And so she's going to do most of the presenting today, but I did want to say a couple things. One is Ohio Promise, we at OCALI are only responsible for the Early Childhood Inclusion Center of Excellence, but we also work closely with, now it's the Department of Children and Youth, on their implementation of the other components that Megan will be talking about. And so we can answer questions, but at the end of the day, if there's questions we can't answer, we would direct you back to JFS or the Department of Children and Youth, and we can give you context there. But I'm not going to talk anymore. Thanks again, like I said, for having us. And Megan, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. So we are from OCALI. We are the Early Childhood Inclusion Center of Excellence, which was built as part of Ohio Promise. These are just some of the other centers that are within OCALI. They all offer unique, different resources that are available through the website with really awesome, skilled professionals that can assist in those areas. So we are part of Ohio Promise. Ohio Promise stands for promoting resources, opportunities, and meaningful inclusion through support and education. And it's basically an opportunity for us to pour resources, expertise, and a robust infrastructure that will help us realize this vision of giving a strong foundation of support, acceptance, empowerment to all children from birth. So here's a little bit of the history. There was a grant that was chosen for us to support technical assistance, and Ohio is one of the 9 states selected for this intensive technical assistance opportunity. In 2020, there was a lot of organizations that came together to start meeting about where Ohio stood in different state indicators of high quality inclusion. And that's kind of how we shifted into part of Ohio Promise. So looking at, from where we are to where we want to be. And so that kind of looks like making recommendations for childcare, preschool, and early age education, different licensing recommendations for Step Up to Quality, and identifying what could work for a program designation or distinction, and creating family resources that can bridge those gaps between parents and professionals. So these are kind of the pillars of Ohio Promise. It encompasses a professional credential, a program designation, the Center of Excellence, which is us, a scholarship program, and then a state advisory team. The professional credential is available through OCRA, and it's an early childhood inclusion credential. It's available for free for professionals, and it really provides an awareness of what inclusion is and how it can be implemented in various settings. There are 3 levels, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. There's also program designation, which can be received if 1 administrator and 1 teacher in a center receive the professional credential. That program designation comes with some benefits, potentially some additional funding, and some other kind of incentives that come with being an inclusive childcare program. And also having that designation allows you to be searchable as inclusive childcare when families are looking for a place for their child. So there's a little checkbox that they can click to say, I'd like an inclusive childcare program. And that just kind of shows that this center is aware of inclusive practices, they're working towards being more inclusive, and that helps families know, like, oh, this might be a great place for my child. Then there's the Center of Excellence, and we are working in a lot of ways to kind of fill some gaps in inclusive education and helping professionals kind of meet the needs of the kids that are in front of them. And I'll show you in a few minutes how we're going to do that. There's also a scholarship program. And this program provides scholarships to children with special needs who are not eligible for publicly funded childcare, and that is primarily to support families. Then there's also a state advisory team, and this is a diverse group of professionals and parents that are looking at early childhood inclusion and examining the data and the lessons learned and the impact that's being created through Ohio Promise. So here are those 3 levels of the early childhood inclusion credential that I was talking about earlier. So level 1 is already available, and it's just awareness of inclusion. What is it? What isn't it? Some basic ideas of how to make your setting more inclusive, and just kind of builds that perspective of inclusive care. Level 2, which I believe will be out in a few weeks, is more about applying that knowledge of inclusion. And then level 3, which will be out later this year, is really that implementation piece, and providing those skills and the ability to kind of analyze what's working and what's not in inclusion. So here is where you can search online for early child care and education programs. And over on this left side, you'll see that inclusive child care program checkbox. So any programs that have that designation can be checked, and then it filters those so that you can see which ones have received that. Those programs can get some incentives. It's provided currently 125 programs with $20,000 and 50 new programs with $15,000 to kind of offset some of the costs that can be associated with serving children with disabilities. That designation, again, only requires 1 administrator and 1 lead teacher to complete that inclusion credential. And there are potential other incentives to be added for this in the future. So there's also a direct scholarship that is supposed to provide family support. It's currently a pilot, so we're working to see how this works. But essentially, the program and the family applies for this scholarship together, and it's supposed to offset the cost of the child's tuition. Programs can receive $500 a month for that child if the child is accepted to the program, and the child must have been denied for publicly funded childcare and have an IFSP or IEP. So here's where we come in, the Early Childhood Inclusion Center of Excellence. It emerged from a cross-sector vision for Ohio's young children and families to have full access to meaningful inclusion where they live, play, and spend their day. This came out of a partnership with local, state, and community leaders and agencies, and we will help inform policies, provide current and innovative guidance, resources, training, practice-based consultation to early child care and education providers throughout the state. So we have a couple visions, kind of ways that we're going to do this. So vision number 1, the Early Childhood Inclusion Center of Excellence, you'll often see it referenced as the COE, is a foundation for cross-sector inclusive early child care and education in Ohio that supports continuous improvement efforts of state and community leaders, professionals, and families. So here are some of the ways that we're going to do that. You'll see on the right, there's kind of a tree of basically the 5 main avenues that we're going to try and meet some of these goals. So we provide resources and tools, coaching and technical assistance, professional development and training, statewide coordination and guidance, and evaluation and continuous improvement. So we're looking at translating research into practice. We're trying to develop documents that can guide professionals, resources that can help educate people about inclusion and how to implement it within their setting. We're developing training materials and running presentations just like this. We will curate and disseminate extensive collections of materials, and we will develop processes for ensuring the quality and fidelity and implementation of all the initiatives and practices that we are working on. Here's what some of these priorities look like. You'll see on the left, inclusion support specialist. That's what I am. I'm serving the Southwest region of Ohio, but we have 3 others that are serving other areas of Ohio. What I love about that is our team is very diverse in our backgrounds. Personally, I have a behavior background, working with kids with autism. We have someone on our team who worked with kiddos who are deaf and hard of hearing, another one from early intervention, another one who came from a classroom, and that's just the ISS team. We have a large amount of very skilled professionals from all disciplines. And it's great because if requests come in my area that I feel like one of my team members has better knowledge about, we get to come together and make sure that we're providing really great services to everyone. We also have communication and outreach. So doing things like this, really educating people on what is available so that all of these resources that we're able to provide can be accessed. We have early childhood cross-sector collaboration. We're really working with lots of different agencies. We're all doing really great work. And so we're looking at how can we work together to further this work together, not to duplicate services, but to fill gaps where where they exist. We're disseminating equipment and materials. So in a few slides, we'll look at the types of materials and activities that we have available. We're looking at different subject matter expertise and innovation in that way. Training and coaching. We'll do some consultation. We'll do some more in-depth kind of practice-based coaching models. We'll provide technical assistance, and anything beyond my abilities as with my technical abilities, we have a team of people who are trained in assistive technology that are accessible to us and to the centers that we serve. And then we also are looking at evaluation and continuous improvement. So we're looking at how are things going, feedback from the people that we're working with. We're looking at what types of requests we're getting and maybe what areas those are in and what resources are available in different areas, and kind of making adjustments as we go. Our second vision is early care and education services are high quality, developmentally appropriate, and accessible to all young children and families in Ohio. And that's really going to be done through professional development, collaboration, and training. So here are kind of the summary of the activities that we do. So they basically fit into these categories: general information, which is kind of what we're doing today, telling you what's available, and teaching you how to access it, answering any questions that you have, and kind of collaborating in this way. Participation at outreach activities to share resources. That could be something in the community that someone is hosting, an event maybe that you guys host, or at a local community center, or places where people in the community are going to be that might need our assistance. That could also be participation at a conference, presenting information, and having resources available, maybe at a table or a networking event, just to be able to interact with people and share the resources that we have available. And those resources could be physical materials or might be information. Presentations and training. That can look like going into a center, presenting to staff, maybe on a specific topic like behavior or inclusion in general, and kind of tailoring it to that center and that center's needs. We're really focused again on the professionals and training them so that not just so that they can work with the kids right in front of them, but so then when these kids leave them and they get a new group of kids, they still have those skills ingrained. Individual consultation and technical assistance. This could look like maybe going in for a consult, 3 visits about, to just kind of give some basic information on, let's look at your environment, let's look at your materials, how can we make some simple adaptations, maybe add some visuals to increase kids' independence, and that kind of thing. So really just a few visits to kind of chat with the professional about what they're struggling with and see how we can make a few adjustments that might be able to help. If they need more than that, we would look at something within this practice-based coaching model, which would be potentially more like a 3 to 6 month relationship where there would be specific goals outlined, an action plan, really looking at what is the ISS responsible for, what is the teacher or the administrator or whoever we're working with at the center responsible for, setting goals and objectives and timelines on when to meet those, and really working and partnering together for a longer amount of time to build those foundational skills in those professionals. Assistance with cross-agency collaboration, really working with other agencies and looking at where they're struggling and where they're succeeding, and kind of figuring out how we can support each other to make this work even better, to kind of amplify the impact. And then community program capacity building. That's more looking at an organization kind of from the top down, or maybe from the bottom up, I guess. We're looking at policies, the way things are set up, the structure, kind of picking apart those pieces that are foundational and figuring out, are these inclusive practices? Are there things that we can change in those ways that would make our whole center more inclusive? And so really working with a set leadership team at different facilities to evaluate what they're doing and how they're doing it, and help them build that mindset as well so they can continue progressing at their center. Here is the map of the different regions that we cover. It's possible that this could change as we continue getting requests, but for now, this is the most current map. And so I'm in the light blue, the Southwest region, and then we have staff members Alexa, Katie, and Lindsay covering the other 3 regions of Ohio. Our third vision is coordinated awareness of, access to, and widespread use of tools that exist in all early care and education settings in Ohio. So we do that through universal access and assistive technology materials and equipment. So here are some of the material supports that we would provide. Child-specific things that a specific child needs, maybe assistive technology, something that we can lend out from the lending library to give them, like a specific child, something that they need to be more independent or more successful in their setting. We also have, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to bring back the cross sector collaboration. That's one of our activities. That's a good point to bring it in, because we can provide AT that could be used in the short term while maybe the school is ordering a device for the child, or but we really want to work together with those professionals in the agencies. If a child needs an AT device, more than likely they have a professional who has that expertise on their team already. And so we don't want to take the place of any of those professionals. We want to make sure that we're helping a child care understand how to find the resources that they need to be able to kind of consistently use the methods that are being used by others that serve the child. So
yeah, thank you for adding that, Laura. I think that's a really great point. I think for me, this is my personal opinion, but I feel like for me, I'm going to know that I'm doing good work when people no longer need me, when they have the tools they need, when they're collaborating with each other. And so it sounds a little backwards, but I really do think if we can set up people for success where they're collaborating with the professionals in their district, in their center, and they no longer need my assistance or the same level of assistance, then we'll know that we're moving in the right direction. The next way is training giveaways. So we have set aside some materials that we can give away to coincide with trainings. So potentially I might offer training on visuals, and we could look at visual schedules, and we could look at a variety of ways to post visuals around your setting and use it in different ways. And then we might hand out something like Boardmaker to a set number of registrants so that they have the tools that they need to make the visuals that we discussed. So kind of finding materials that coincide with the specific trainings as both an incentive to participate, but also we want to provide you with the resources. We also have universal access kits, which are kits that each of the ISSs personally have in our presence that we can take into schools and centers that have a bunch of adapted materials, different kind of common materials that can be used to adapt other things that you see. And so we can bring those in, we can trial them with kids, we can teach professionals how to use them, and really make things more accessible. We also have grab and goes, which are basically things that don't require additional training, things that you pretty much can't use incorrectly, but can also be very versatile, used in a lot of different ways. And so the first grab and go that we did was a pop tube. So we gave every center, every registered child care center in Ohio, a set of 3 pop tubes, and it had a card in it that talked a little bit about us, but also gave a couple different ways to use the pop tubes. So an academic way to use it, a musical way to use it, and a sensory way to use it. And so really being able to give those resources out to not only let people know who we are, to build that awareness, but also to give them something physical that they can start using today. Here's kind of that overview of some of the things we've talked about. So this first one on the left is those grab and goes that don't really need any training, and they might be available at different outreach opportunities, maybe some networking with local childcare facilities, presentations, and trainings. We also have those universal access kits that we can build knowledge and kind of trial different things, and we would bring those into centers with us. Tips and training materials, really providing kind of short tips on topic specific things of ways to, could be something environmental. It could be how to use duct tape to adapt different things in your classroom. And so looking at what do you have available already and how can we teach you multiple ways to use that tool to make your center more inclusive, but also your kids more successful. And then assistive technology. We do have some assistive technology available, low tech kind of through us, and then we have some higher tech stuff through the lending library, and then advanced trained professionals that can help with kind of the higher level.
And I want to just mention really quickly, some of those things that are in the lending library, they're not necessarily high tech, but they're put together in kits. Like there's a music kit, there's a sensory kit, there's a transition kit. I think there's about 30 kits that anybody can go look at the OCALI lending library. And if you aren't familiar with the OCALI lending library, there's thousands of materials in there already. And we are adding even more early childhood. So great place to go look. It's free throughout the state of Ohio. They will, you check something out, they will ship it to you and send you the materials to ship it back. So it's free. So
yeah, the thing I love about the lending library is, you can lend something out for a month. And you might only need the thing for a month. If it's a theme on Very Hungry Caterpillar, you might do that for a month and then send it back, and you have all the resources you need to do that well. And maybe if a professional is recommending, a child have more fine motor toys at home, maybe the family doesn't have the resources to get those, but they could lend them out for a month. And so families can access that and professionals can as well. The cool thing about the professional access is based on your license. So if you're a speech therapist or a BCBA or whatever the credential is, it kind of unlocks this additional area of the lending library. So, if you're a speech therapist, you'd have access then to speech assessments that wouldn't be accessible to anyone that doesn't have that training. But it does allow you to get additional materials that maybe your center doesn't have, or for a family to get things that they don't have to use with their child, either while they're trialing it to then maybe purchase it, or if they only need it for a limited amount of time. There's lots of really great stuff in there. Okay, so here's how to contact us. There is a link to our website, and on that website, there is a little section for kind of staying informed, and that's where you would get our newsletter. You can enter your email there, you would get our newsletter, get information on upcoming trainings. And then if you scroll down a little bit more, there's something that says connect with us. And that would be, it'll take you to a form where it'll ask you some questions. And this is where you would kind of submit a request for one of those activities we discussed. If you or a center you're working with, needs consultation, needs coaching, needs a professional development day, needs, questions, maybe you just, maybe your center needs more information about who we are, kind of some general stuff. That's where you can submit a request for all of those things. And we get all of those personally and we respond to them personally. So just know that each of those requests matters, and we will respond to them.
And I'm going to throw a plug in. Our newsletter, our first edition of the newsletter, should be coming out in the next week. And it's really, really, really awesome. So if you would like to receive it, definitely go to our website, look for the subscribe, put your email address in, click subscribe, and you'll get it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's all for us. Thank you so much for having us and letting us share a little bit about OCALI and the Center of Excellence. And we'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thanks so much, Megan. That was great. Can I throw one more plug in really quickly?
Yeah, always.
We have a training coming up on February 6th and 7th. It's pivotal response treatment. It's an evidence-based treatment for young children. This, I believe the 6th and 7th will focus primarily on young children, like ages 2, 3, 4-year-olds, because we're partnering with early intervention to bring the training in. Pivotal response treatments works with, it's evidence-based with all young children. So it's a great training. It's free. So if you go to our website, you'll see a link for it.
Thank you so much for all of that really helpful information. And thanks for any links or anything referenced in this. Please make sure you see the chat, as a lot of helpful information has been dropped in there. Next, we're going to hear from Troy Hunter of Groundwork, Ohio. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Troy?
Yes, thank you. Again, I am Troy. Thank you guys for having me. I'm just kind of extra onto this Ohio inclusion presentation. I love what everything that Megan just said. As a former early intervention provider myself, my heart is with this work, and I love to hear everything that that we're doing in the state of Ohio. I'm the Director of Research, Evaluation, and Performance at Groundwork, Ohio. Groundwork, Ohio is a committed, nonpartisan public policy research and advocacy organization. We were formed in 2004, so we're celebrating our 20-year anniversary this year. And we champion high-quality early learning and healthy development strategies from prenatal period to age 5 that lay a strong foundation for Ohio's kids, families, and communities. We advance quality early childhood systems in Ohio by engaging, educating, and mobilizing diverse stakeholders and strategic partners to promote data-driven and evidence-based early childhood policies. So as we think about how policies play into the work that we're doing with Ohio Promise in the state of Ohio, really thinking about even the history of education and special education throughout the United States. We went from, late 1700s, early 1800s, where, we started to build schools and there was no place for kids with disabilities. They didn't have or a right to education. They were often kept at home. There were laws in certain parts of the country that actually prohibited them from being seen in public. Chicago had them in their city guidelines up until the 1970s, where they were called the ugly laws, where if you were saw in public with a disability, you could be fined money. So we haven't always treated the disability community well. So it's great to see that this is, where we're headed and where we've gotten. And we went from, the late 1800s into the 1900s, where we started to see some education of students with disabilities, but it was still in segregated areas. We saw a rise in institutionalization of individuals with disabilities. So children who were deemed with a disability would get shipped away to an institution and could be maybe potentially educated there, but with not the same standards that kids were educated in their local school districts. And we went from that to kind of some pivotal court cases that really started to change the face of special education in the U.S. and Ohio. And right off, one of the big court cases that you guys might be familiar with is Brown versus Board of Education. But the first time that the federal government is coming out and saying it is illegal to segregate people in education, specifically based on race at the time. And we saw a lot happening in the civil rights movement in the mid 1900s that the disability community was able to kind of build on top of. And we saw some really important court cases that really started to change the face of education for individuals with disabilities. Right in that early 1970s, we saw a court case in 1971 in Pennsylvania that deemed that a child with a disability was required to be educated by the school district, that they weren't allowed to separate them in their education. And that was huge. It was the first court case that said so. The next year we saw a similar one in Washington, D.C., which led to the passing of the first reiteration of what you guys now know as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, but at the time was passed as the Education of All Handicapped Children's Act in 1975. And that was the first time that federal legislation said you have to, in children with disabilities are required to educational rights within their school districts. And some of the things that were included in that included things like terms like least restrictive environment, which meant that kids were required to be educated in the place that was least restricting and most like the education of their peers. So not only were schools required to educate children with disabilities, they're required to do it in their least restrictive environment, in an environment that was most like their non-disabled peers at the time. It also required that schools were required to provide a free and appropriate public education. So this was also going to be free for children with disabilities. It's not something that had to pay for, and schools actually had to identify and find these children. So we really saw a change in the 1970s with that first kind of passing of the Education of All Handicapped Children's Act, and which was reauthorized in the 90s as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and we saw some things that are more relevant to what I'm about to say, the kind of brief history and pass through policies that got us where we're at. But looking at kind of the two areas that we see in under IDEA in early childhood, which is Part C and Part B of IDEA. So when I say Part C, I mean educational services provided with children with identified disabilities birth to 3, and Part B being children 3 and on. So in Ohio, that is served through early intervention, which was under the Department of Development Disabilities, but is switching over to the new Ohio Department of Children and Youth, which is also really exciting because we're seeing a lot of these things coming together to protect and educate our children the best way that we know how. Children with a qualifying diagnosis or disability birth to 3 are entitled to early intervention services. So entitled to it's 55 units, I think. I don't work for so if I say it wrong, I apologize. It's off the top of my head, but it's around 55 units of early intervention a year that's free to those families. That's not billed to their insurance. It's a funded program that anyone with a qualifying developmental delay or disability and qualifies for services is entitled to those services. There's different models that in Ohio that looks like we see a lot of home visiting, so providers going in and working with not just parents and guardians as caregivers, but also childcare programs. I was an early intervention provider, and I went into many childcare programs and worked with them to help support the development and inclusion of the kids I was working with in their center. Part B, when kids turn 3, they no longer qualify for early intervention. If they continue to qualify through services, it's through their local school district. So once you exit IDEI, then you go through your school district and go through the evaluation process for an IEP. If you qualify for services for an IEP, that is served through your local school district and where you live. And there's some exceptions to that. There's some additional programming like autism scholarship and John Peterson scholarship that you can receive your educational services through third-party providers if that's available, but kind of all under this umbrella of our policies supported that kids with disabilities, children with disabilities belong in our education system. And what is really exciting about Ohio Promise is we kind of see this really birth to 3 is what I'm about to talk about right now, but even past that as we think about preschool and as we think about after school care. But birth to 3, early intervention services are not care. That's not what they provide. That's not the services that children are entitled to. They're entitled to early intervention, but they're not entitled to childcare. So if I have a child birth to 3 that has a developmental disability or delay, they're not entitled to childcare. Just like many other people are entitled to childcare. Either it's not a public good in the United States and Ohio, but just thinking about having a disability and qualifying for early intervention services doesn't mean that you're going to be able to automatically find a center that's going to be able to meet your needs. So thinking about that gap that's existed there of, well, I have a child with a disability, they don't get school age services until age 3, so they don't have a place to go throughout the day, but I'm a parent and I still have to work. So what do I do? And as they try to find childcares aren't always equipped or required to take their children. So we see disproportionately amount of parents of children with disabilities not able to work, not able to find reliable care that is safely able to provide quality early child education experiences to their child. And where Ohio Promise comes in is it provides this need to bridge the gap between services and the services that we know kids need and an opportunity to provide inclusive care throughout the state of Ohio in a unique and an innovative way. So Ohio Promise isn't using their money to build special early childhood programs so that people can send their kids. They're working with communities to identify what do we need to do? What do we need to change? How can we adapt to make this a great environment, a least restrictive environment for this child? And I think that's really important as we specifically think about our kids in early intervention, right? So that birth to 3, 3 to 5, it could provide school services, but still needing for care. It doesn't mean that this care needs automatically go away. And I looked at the numbers from 2016 for early intervention up to now, 2023, the most recent data I was able to pull. And we've seen a 25% increase from 2016 to now in early intervention referrals. So that's a large amount of increased referrals to early intervention. We see at any given time of the year, over 13,000 kids are receiving early intervention services in the state of Ohio at any given time. Throughout the entire year in 2023, over 20,000 kids were served through early intervention in the state of Ohio. So there's a lot of kids out there that have been identified with a disability or delay that might have unique needs that make childcare hard for them. And it's not that childcare centers don't want to serve these kids. We saw an outpouring of centers saying, hey, I want the designation. I want to participate and get this credential. I want to do this. Please just show me how. So Ohio Promise is such an important piece of that, because if there might be a gap in understanding education, but that willingness is there. I want to be able to serve this kid. I've never done something like this before, but I'm willing to learn. And where's those gaps, and how can we best support these providers? And that's what Megan's doing. She's going out and she's saying, okay, how can we just change this? Maybe this environment. Maybe it's an environmental thing. How can we set things up in a different way? What are the challenges that you're experiencing, and what do we need to address in real time to that individual provider's needs? Because providers vary, and centers look different, and home providers look different. But I think what we have to keep in mind is we individualize it to the child, just like in Part C and Part B of IDEA and special education services. And birth to 3, you have an individual family service plan, and 3 and up, K through 12 education, you have a IEP, individual education program. And so that keyword is individual. So it wouldn't work, right? And I'm sure Laura and Megan would agree with me if you just said, here's the 10 things that you need to know to meet the needs of this kid. And if you do these 10 things, any kid that comes into your program, you'll be able to support their needs. And that would be setting people up for failure, right? Because kids are different and kids have unique needs. So there's not like a book that you can just buy and read, and by the end of it, you're done and you can meet the needs of any kid and without any support or any help. But you might be someone that says, I want to do it. So if I want to do it, I believe that this child belongs in my program. I believe that they can be successful here. I just need to know what unique things about this child can I learn and do to make this the best place for them to be. And when I heard Megan saying that, I thought was so great is she talked about we should be working ourselves out of a job. We should be getting to ourselves to a place where we don't need an individual, a regional specialist to come in and help, because by the time I've worked with 4 kids that might have autism, I might have learned a little bit about autism, and it gets a little bit easier every time that I've learned some things about it. I might have working with kids with feeding tubes. I used to be administrator of an inclusive early learning program, and our infant teacher used to joke, the first time she got a kid with a feeding tube, it was so scary. She's like, I'm not a nurse. How could I possibly do this? And we kind of had this conversation. The idea and mentality that we took on as a program was parents don't go to 4 years of nursing school or 6 years of med school to learn how to do this stuff. They don't have a choice. They just learn to do it. And they make it work, and they don't have to get any special, schooling to do so. And if parents can do it, as care providers, we can do it. And that mentality really changed how we looked at things. And our infant teacher now would joke, I don't work there, I'm not there anymore, but she would joke that I actually prefer feeding tubes. They're easier. It's less cleanup time than mealtime with a toddler, in a joking way, because the act itself wasn't undoable. And once she learned how to do it in a way that fit with their routine, it didn't even require an extra person. It was that mentality and that willingness to adapt and learn, what can I do and how do I do this? And then it got easier, and kids that she took in, it was no problem. And then she could put her focus on other things that need to be adjusted, or kids that had different needs than kids she was used to. And that's every kid. Every kid has individual needs. I'm not a big, advocate for the word special needs, because all kids have needs. All kids have needs that should be met. And, as we talk about special education programming in the United States and Ohio, it's there because we had to fight for it. It's there because we had to advocate for it, but it's a right, it's a protected right that kids without disabilities didn't have to fight for. It's a protected right that kids without disabilities didn't have to have generations of parents before them sue school districts or sue organizations who weren't meeting their needs. And so it was a right that they got just from being born. Just by living in the state of Ohio, you're entitled to public education. We fought for that right for kids with disabilities and receiving special education services, and that's why special education exists, and to help make the education experience the best that we can for kids, so that they can be in classrooms and in environments with their peers without disabilities. There's the other students without disability. So as we apply that to early childhood education and care, and we think about if we have a kid who doesn't have a disability, the process is still hard. Don't get me wrong. There's childcare deserts all throughout Ohio. 60% of kids living in rural Ohio live in childcare deserts. So the problem is real. There's still issues in early childhood education. So that those still exist with or without disability and special education rights. Those exist, but the process looks the same for a lot of families. They go and they look at a program and they say, which one's for me? They go and they tour and they select a program that meets the needs of their family. That includes the program type, the program price, the program, they get to make these decisions, but adults and parents with kids with disabilities, that those choices aren't the same, because it's not a choice. It doesn't mean that I can go to these 10 programs and tour them and pick the one that I like the best. It means I have to go and look for what program I'm willing to even try and meet the needs of my kid. So as we think about that, and we talk about where Ohio Promises work that they're doing and why it's so important, is we're trying to do what we did right for K through 12 education in the 1970s, and we have a long way to go in Ohio. But how do we make it where choice is a protected right for parents, that parents have a choice that can say, I have multiple programs that I can choose from that all can meet the needs of my child, and I can look at things like price and location and type. Because if you're a parent that there's 5 programs and the most expensive one's the only one that's willing to take your kid, then you got to make it work. You might be giving up other things, or you might have to choose an option that is different. So I'm beating that like a dead horse, and I know I talked about that a lot, but I think it's really important as we think about from a policy standpoint why Ohio Promise matters and why it's important, is because we're trying to work towards a better early childhood education system in Ohio and the United States, that every child has a right and an experience that is quality and is accepting, and a place that they belong. They have a place that they can go to, and that they belong, that they're not looked at as a diagnosis or a kid that they have to do special things for, or it's part of the system, and we have all these supports in place that any kid can look at a variety of different childcare programs, and any parent can say which one is best for me, and say my child belongs here. So as we look forward into the future, there's a lot of pilot parts of Ohio Promise. So it's a new program, and they're doing a lot of new things, and the funding is going to change from budget to budget. So I don't know your budget process, Laura, and I don't know where you guys are with that, but there's going to probably be a time where you're going to have to ask for more money from the General Assembly to say, hey, this is working, and we need to be able to continue to fund this. And that's where it's important for us as a community to say, we can't go backwards. We can't go back to not, trying to accept kids with disabilities because of funding. So we have to be able to fight and show up for advocating for programs like Ohio Promise, programs that promote the inclusion and belonging of children with disabilities and their families throughout a variety of different spaces in our community. So thank you for having me today. I'm gonna drop in the chat Groundwork's interest form. So if you're interested in being up to date as much as possible on what's happening in early childhood, and we're constantly talking about issues around and the current state of what's happening with children with disabilities and childcare as well. You can find it here. I'm also going to throw in the chat we actually just hosted a webinar last week. Laura was on it, talking about the state of inclusive childcare in Ohio and what are some considerations that we need to make and how can we work really hard and continue to think about progress and moving forward and making Ohio the best place to be any child, including a child with a disability.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Troy. Appreciate that. Let me get the, this was the video from your recent event. I'm putting that in the chat right now for everybody to see there. Okay, great. Thank you. Really appreciate all of that, both from OCALI and Groundwork. So I want to thank Dr. Laura Maddox and Megan Carlton and Troy Hunter for joining us today. Thanks again. So I would like to give you just a quick overview of some upcoming events. Then we will hold the standard membership drawing and then have a quick Q&A session at the end. We had some questions come in during the presentations today and some questions that were submitted ahead of time as well. So our 2024 event plans include the NACCE Public Policy Forum that's being held in just a few weeks here, February 25th through the 26th. And Swayze is a co-lead for the Ohio team this year. Got some information on Public Policy Forum for you in the chat. Also be celebrating Week of the Young Child from April 6th to the 12th. We'll be holding some exchange reflections events on timely topics in ECE with upcoming events starting during April. We'll be continuing our EC Link events throughout the year. Those are quarterly events where we share information and resources. And then we'll also be holding our Early Childhood Awards that will be held during early May. So save the dates and be sure to stay in touch with us so you can join us for these events. More information on NACCE's Public Policy Forum is available at that link I put in the chat for you. And for future events, to stay in the loop on those, make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, sign up for our mailing list, and visit our website as well. So now I'll toss it over to Marie quickly for some information on getting involved with Swayze. Marie?
Thanks, Chad. If you are interested in getting more involved with Swayze, then please consider joining our board or a committee. If you're interested in joining the board, nominations will open again during the second half of 2024. We are looking for board members who are committed to our mission and vision, can volunteer time for board and committee meetings and work, have skills and interests that would support the association, and are passionate about the early childhood profession. If this sounds like you, then make sure you're checking our website, on our mailing list, and follow us on all of the socials that Chad just mentioned, and look for the call for nominations in the second half of 2024. We also have several active committees listed here on your screen: the Early Learning Leaders, Equity, Finance and Fundraising, Public Policy, Program and Events, and regional committees for Cincinnati, Columbus, and Dayton. If you're interested in learning more about our committees or interested in joining a committee, then please be sure to contact us at swayze@gmail.com. Chad?
Thanks, Marie. Now we will hold the NACCE/Swayze Standard Membership Prize drawing. So if you're currently on the meeting, then you are entered into the drawing for the standard level membership. The membership will be awarded at random to someone in the audience today. So let me get a random name here. Imagine there's a drum roll happening right now. And the winner of the standard level membership is Nadine Thompson. Congratulations, Nadine. I will follow up with you via email using the email that you registered with, and we'll get you that standard membership. All righty. So to round out today's event here, we've got a few more minutes here. There were some questions that were submitted during registration, some submitted during the event here. We'll get to as many as we can here. You can feel free to submit additional questions in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function on Zoom as well. It should be at the bottom of your Zoom window, a button that says Q&A. You can submit questions there as well. So these questions first were submitted during registration. These are just open for any of today's speakers to answer. So one of the questions was, is there any support available through the Ohio Promise Initiative for classroom resources?
Yes, definitely. So
Great.
yeah, we a lot of our materials and resources that we have as part of Ohio Promise, we're giving away. So because we were asked to make that this initiative, really we want to put things in the hands of professionals, and so we don't want to take it away. So a lot of the resources that we have, will, if they require training, we'll provide training, along with it. But we have lots of resources. So submit a request to us, and then we can chat about what your needs are and help you out.
Great. Next question is, how can we find trainings on supporting children with disabilities?
So, I always try to make myself go out beyond OCALI, but we do have so many resources on the OCALI website, not only for early childhood too, lots and lots and lots of free training. Also, if you go to the Ohio Early Intervention website, it's ohioearlyintervention.org, I believe, and you go to providers and then training, you can actually search all of their trainings that they have available. And so there's a large number of trainings there for birth to 3. And then I'm trying to think of where else to send you. Troy, do you have, or Megan, do you have other suggestions?
Yeah, I know that the Nice Honor Center at Ohio State, they operate an inclusive early learning program. So they serve as a model site of instruction. They have 5 programs, 1/3 of their students are receiving services. And they have, I think, like up to 10 Ohio approved trainings that you can get credit for on different topics, and from lifting and handling, working with, their physical therapist does, on working with a variety of different gross motor needs. They have some implementing speech strategies in the classroom. They have some things around social emotional health as well. They have a really good list, and if you reach out, I'll put a name in the chat, but I don't think I have access to the full chat, so Chad will repost it for me. Of their program coordinator that you can reach out. I know that they exist and that they provided them, so they're a really great resource as well, and they get lots of practice doing it every day.
Yeah, that's a great point. And those same ones are probably listed in, silly me, I didn't mention OCRA. I do not know yet if just the general public can search the OCRA, the trainings available that are Ohio approved, that you can, that are listed in OCRA, if they can search for like disabilities or for inclusion or that kind of thing. I'm not sure. But there are definitely a lot of trainings up there. We currently are doing an audit of those trainings to identify what is there and where we have gaps in the state. But what I'll also do is I will ask them as part of that what we could do, so that people would know which ones, would be, if they're looking about strategies and interventions for children with disabilities, how people can find those. So.
Great, thank you. And I'll get that put in the chat for you in just a second, Troy. We had some other questions here. What can I do to get involved with advocacy for children with disabilities?
I think getting on those newsletters is a great way to start. I think everybody is really intimidated by like that word advocacy and thinking that it means like, weekly going to the state house and talking to legislators. Advocacy can be just as simple as resharing something on social media, forwarding a resource to someone participating in a webinar like this. So I think, I'm personally really excited for OCALI's new newsletter list, and I hope that I hope I signed up on the listserv and get on Groundwork's mailing list as well, because there are opportunities, including advocacy days that happen throughout the year. There's always a developmental disability advocacy day. I think it's March 12th. this coming year, but they sell out really fast. So I didn't even get a chance to join in this time, but I think they provide it virtually as well. So just kind of following groups that getting on listservs so you can kind of pay attention to what's going on in the field. And I think even from a little advocacy standpoint, it's just advocating for the kids that you have a lot of control over, that you have influence over. So it could be a kid in your program, a kid that you know. Advocating can be just as simple as educating someone on something and why this kid should be in our program and advocating even from the program level.
Great, thank you. And then, that can be one of the topics that, you're passionate about that you bring to an event like the NACCE Public Policy Forum. If you are interested in talking directly with state level and federal level legislators, so there's a whole gamut of possibility in that word advocacy, like Troy mentioned. So we had several questions come through and some during the registration asking about how does Ohio Promise align with public school programs. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I will say we will help with public school programs as well. We will work in any early childhood program in the state. And so, yeah, I saw Marty's point that, his experience is that they work very closely with the districts that serve their children. And so it sounds like they have some very cohesive, partnership going on. And that's not the case everywhere. And so what we really want to do is we want to fill the gaps. There are some districts that have extensive knowledge and expertise related to inclusion and serving young children with all different abilities and needs. And there are some districts that reach out and really want help. We are working with the state support teams, SSTs. They are a state arm to provide professional development, and there's even variability amongst what SSTs offer or what CCR&Rs offer in the state. And so our goal, if things are working well, our goal is to not step in and step on people's toes. We don't want to help in those situations. We want to help where there are gaps, where there are needs, where we can really provide the assistance that's needed to develop what it sounds like is being experienced by the person, by Marty, who asked about it. So to kind of explain.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And then the one last question here that just came in. Do you have resources for Spanish-speaking families?
Go ahead, Troy, were you going to say something?
I was gonna say DeSaco, Down Syndrome Association of Central Ohio has a lot of Spanish outreach materials, and I know that they put a lot out there. So they're a good partner organization, and they're doing a lot of disability work around the state. That's a place that has some Spanish resources that might tie into maybe what you were gonna say, Laura. I don't know.
No, that's fine. I was just gonna say, OCALI as a whole does. The Center of Excellence doesn't have a lot of resources at all yet. We're just building those. But our website, OCALI's website, so like, for example, the Outreach Center for Deafness and Blindness, somebody was asking some questions about that. If you go up to the OCALI website, on any page of the website, you can change it to many, many different languages. And so a lot of the resources can be translated into Spanish or other languages. So.
And Troy, you said DeSaco is at the Down Syndrome Association?
The Down Syndrome Association of Central Ohio. They have a Spanish outreach part of their, I'm going to say the wrong thing, but I'll, if you look up their website, Chad, or I can do it and drop it in there.
Yep.
They work to provide a lot of Spanish resources for their communities.
Great, wonderful. Yeah, and I did just put it in that chat. It's dsaco.net. All right, wonderful. Well, we're a little bit over time, but I think it was time well spent. Again, I really want to thank all of our speakers who joined us today. And so again, thank you to Dr. Laura Maddox and Megan Carlton of OCALI and Troy Hunter of Groundwork, Ohio for all that great information, answered a lot of questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. And please be sure to stay connected with SWACE. You can visit our website. You can join our mailing list. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on X. I've got some links on the screen now that are also in the chat for you. By doing all those things, you can be sure that you're staying in the loop with everything that we are doing throughout this year and beyond. So thanks so much for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for having us.
Yes, thank you, Chad.
Thank you.